Welcome to the Slade Ham experiment. You, yeah, specifically you. I'm glad you're here. Welcome aboard the Midnight Spaceship. All red and aglow as I like it. I skipped a week. You got a Slade Runner episode from some of my Japanese exploits in March. Now I'm back. Back from Canada. In fact, excited to be here. We are closing in on August 19th, the taping of my new special happening at the Midtown Arts and Theater Center here in Houston. You're going to want to come, I promise. I just worked everything out in Canada. 2 weeks up there, away from this Texas heat. I enjoyed myself. I've been disconnected from everything, working on a show. I don't have room for distraction. I've been putting my earbuds in and just leaving them off just to make people think that I'm listening to something. That keeps them out of my ears. Somehow I caught the news. People were forwarding clips of Mitch McConnell running out of batteries. That was hysterical. Just up for 21 seconds. Dude, have we not wound our politicians? They're getting old. The springs are weakening. You got to wind them or shake them or something. Anyways, I'm usually antisocial on my trips home. I flew back a nightmare with United again. Every trip, you can almost go back through every podcast I've ever done. And if I did a podcast within 2 or 3 days of having flown on United, which is what I usually fly when I go places, there's a nightmare. Every time this year, Denver was a nightmare. Japan was a nightmare. It's all been nightmares. So I get first flight out every time I travel. This is a little pro tip that I thought held up. This won't be enough to get me to change my strategy, but first flight out usually is the safest flight of the day. The reason being it doesn't have a chance to be disrupted by previous flights in the day. This flight was late, made this flight late. That's why your 5 p.m. usually doesn't take off on time. But at 6 a.m., a flight that boards at 5:30, one would be led to believe that there was nothing prior to that that couldn't have been worked out overnight. You had the whole evening to get this plane here in one place. Yet somehow United, we didn't take off until noon. So I sat there in the Ottawa airport. There's no lounge. There's also no restaurants. There's just a little airport price gouging tent that sells Pringles for $9 or some crap. Anyway, sit through all of that, finally make it to Newark. One helpful dude got me on my way, got me onto the right flight, moved me up a little bit, helped me out. I didn't get his name. I didn't, but he's the bald dude, and he was great, United. It's only saving grace, keeping me from flipping your airplanes over. But my point is, by the time I got home, I was supposed to be home by 10 a.m. on Monday. I think I got home at 8:30 or 9 in the evening. It was dark. So in Texas, that's probably post 9. My point is, I caught my Uber. Even the Uber took, I swear to God, I'm not trying to complain, but I want to point out all the facts. My Uber took 25 minutes to get to me at the airport, which wouldn't be problematic. I'm patient, but I just remember this whole day has been 16 hours. So when I get in the car, the guy goes, "How are you?" I heard the accent. I go, "I'm tired. I don't mean to bring this negativity into your car." I go, "It's just been a long day. And he goes, "Okay." And he starts driving. But the airport traffic is terrible. If you have any plans of flying in or out of Bush Intercontinental Airport here in Houston, and your plans involve catching an Uber or trying to get picked up or otherwise exiting this airport in any capacity, you need to call friends, you need to talk to your therapist, and you need to bring bags full of patience with you and probably another friend that's a Zen monk who can talk you off the ledge, because it's a nightmare, and I know how to navigate it, man. It's just a heads up. If you're coming in for the special, there's lots of you. So I get in the car, and I'm sort of sitting there, and my Uber driver is being he's asking questions, but he's being respectful of he knows I don't want to answer him, but he's also, poor dude, we're stuck in traffic. We're trying to get out of the airport. It's taken another 20 minutes just to leave the airport. So I'm trying to, I'm not going to make this dude sit here and drive me around like Miss Daisy with no interaction. So I make a car. Airport traffic is, it's terrible. They must be working on, just prompted him to make small talk, to come back and explain to me how terminal so-and-so is under construction or blah, 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 blah. But instead, we end up talking about where I've been, Canada, where else I've been, a few other places. Something about the Middle East comes up, and then I glance over at him, and I go, "You're from Afghanistan, aren't you?" And it was a gamble. It really was. He had on a Shemagh. One of these. If you're just listening to this, you can't see my Afghani scarf. They're large, and they go around your neck, and you can wear them any number of ways. And I think I'm going to start wearing one everywhere. They have so many uses. So many uses. One, they keep your neck warm when it's cold. That's the first use for what we would call a scarf. But they're large. You can wrap them properly around yourself. They also, in the summertime, remarkably cool. It's like wearing long sleeves to keep the sun off your body. This will keep your neck from getting sunburned. You can also, I travel with this thing. You can wad it up as a pillow, sleep on it when you find yourself at the airport trapped overnight. You can, in a pinch, wrap a rock or a coffee mug or something else heavy in it and swing it like a bolo and thunk somebody who's ruining your day. There are so many options with your Shemagh. This might be my new outerwear for the rest of my life. I may wear this every day. I may wear one of these on stage. I don't know. But I talked to Momin. Turns out, my man, his name, my man, Momin. Momin. That was his name. He was a colonel. This is such an amazing story. Such an amazing story. We were in Afghanistan at the same time, several times. Because he's Afghani. He fought for the Afghani army. He was a colonel there, worked with the United States military, and then there were I forget how many people. Nobody knows this really. How many how many third country nationals, how many Afghani citizens worked with the United States military during the war in Afghanistan, and how many of them we brought over, I think, and gave citizenship? If you count, because they were all being hunted. And that was the interesting conversation I had with my Uber driver. He was one of them, and he was there all through COVID. He actually got out with the big evacuation, with all of that went down at the airfield. Was that Bagram? Really weird for me to see. Haven't been all these places, but weirder sitting there talking to a guy who lived through all of that and got out of all of that and was able to be brought back over here and be naturalized, as I said, going through that process and away from the danger. And his wife and kids are over here, and that just what a cool conversation on the way back. And his Shemagh made me. It's Shemagh. If you're wondering what I'm saying, Shemagh, not the dragon from The Hobbit, Smog, but this. Anyway, really good Uber drive. Very good trip to Canada. I may talk more about that Canada trip if I'm not running out of time. A couple other things before I get into this. This sounds like an AI article. It's not. I have, let me touch base on this Old Humble whiskey. This is not a sponsored segment, but they're friends of myself and everything I've been doing the last few years. If you want a bottle, I know some of you guys, listeners, have tried to buy bottles before and have had shipping issues. If you buy 2 or more bottles, it's free shipping. He's going to take care of you. Just punch in promo code Whiskey Brothers, one word, Whiskey Brothers, when you go to Old Humble Distilling and let them know I sent you. See what happens. This is what I was going to point out. Let me read this story. I talked about, did I talk about it on here? We're all afraid that AI is going to take all the jobs. What are we going to do? AI is killing creativity. AI is doing this. AI is replacing so-and-so. You can just get your logo designed by AI. What? Secret Invasion's intro was done by AI? Probably. But the point, there's a lot of talk about AI replacing everybody and everything, and then we're all just going to have to be balls of goo on that Wall-E boat. But of the, I know I said this. I had to have said this. I told somebody this the other day. Of the 250-something jobs that were in danger of being replaced in the mid-1900s by automation of any sort, the only one that was replaced was elevator operator. Right? Technology is not putting us out of business. This article from a while back, the stocks of companies that make photocopying equipment, have earned a lot of money for investors and speculators, but the authors and book publishers of America are beginning to suspect that what is meat for the photocopying industry will turn out to be poison for the writers. That's the premise. Of course, the reason is that no royalties and no wholesale or retail purchase prices are paid on book pages that are photographed or reproduced by heat transference or even microfilmed for a researcher's convenience. Nobody knows, of course, just how many sales of a book are lost because libraries are willing to provide copying services for their patrons for a small fee. This fear-mongering happens in every industry. They continue. To date, the cost of photocopying a whole book would amount to more than the bookstore price. But crucial pages and chapters suffice some potential book buyers, and it is this fact that has alerted the book publishers and the complaining member of the Authors League. So, this fear that all of this was going to happen, they invented the Xerox machine and instantly, writers are going to be put out of business. Publishers will be put out of business. As if every person is going to go stand at the library and individually print and copy every page from a book at twice the cost and then hand collate that and bring it back in an unstapled sheaf of paper. How are you going to read that in a bathtub? Huh? How are you going to flip through 600 unbound pages of... There's an anecdote in here. The stories are already going the rounds of literary parties about the professor of English at a Texas college who makes up his own anthologies for his students out of photocopied material, cheating poets and short story writers of anthology fees. Now, he goes on, the author does, to admit, I've tried to discover the name of the professor, but this is apparently a word-of-mouth legend. These are unsubstantiated claims. The same way people talk about AI, this photocopying threat brings the technological revolution home to writers who are among the last individualists among us. While it hardly threatens to extinguish this breed overnight, it must, in the end, serve to make the life of the freelancer more hazardous than it is at present. Because of this, it poses a menace to the livelihood of scientists, publishers of scientific material, which is usually expensive to print and which must sell in libraries and research institutions if it's to be issued at a profit. They stand to lose in the very near future if a few more pennies can be shaved from the cost of photocopying. Now, the truth, this story should serve as a warning for being afraid. What photocopying did, in fact, I can't tell you the monetized damage it did to the publishing industry because screw the publishing industry. But what it did was it opened up the world of, do you remember zines? Short for magazines. Very niche writings about certain subjects, music in local scenes, perhaps, book reviews, what's happening now. Pick a genre. There's a lot of zines that probably came out for people who like that genre of whatever it might have been. There were zines that had short stories. There were, God, that scared me. They're working on the gas outside, so there's crazy weird sounds happening. Anyway, as long as I'm not being killed. So the Xerox industry, the photocopying industry, didn't do what people thought it would do, which would lead to people photocopying already existing works with publishing deals. What it did was it allowed people who'd never had publishing deals, who didn't have access to that world, access to that world. Now, will AI do that? I don't know. My guess is that it will be less damaging to artists and more helpful to artists, in that, the things that are being talked about, bantered about, script writing, replacing actors, those things, those won't be the real problems. The real problems won't be problems. They'll be solutions to artists who want to make films and haven't had access to everything that studios have had access to. People who have been kept down by the barrier to entry that is the cost of filmmaking. All of those things starting to change a little bit. We talk about iPhones and ring lights and things of that nature, and that gets the job done in a lot of cases. You still got to be a smart filmmaker behind the camera, but that's easier to learn than it is to get all the money you need. It's knocking that barrier to entry down, and that is my point, is that just like the Xerox machine, AI might not all be a bad thing, artists. Before we get all up in arms, destroy it. You might want to find out how to use it. Speaking of, my special right around the corner. August 19th, I've talked about it so much. We're all sick of it. But these last 2 weeks have been important. I've been working the show out, figuring out the details. Ottawa, Canada is usually the most perfect room in the world. Okay? Flawless. If a joke doesn't work in Ottawa, I'm sure I've said it on this show, you get rid of that joke. It's a terrible joke. It's also a false sense of security. Just because a joke does work in Ottawa doesn't mean it's a good joke. It's just Ottawa. However, Wednesday night, I got to work with a fantastic group of guys over the course of the weekend. Really funny comics. Let's see if I can remember the name. I know Jeff McKay was on the show. My friend Brendan McKeegan popped in. There was Greg Stringer was on the show. It was hosted by a local guy, Dylan Parker. Dylan, young comic, funny dude. But the Tuesday and Wednesday show and Thursday all were preceded by a comedy contest, which meant that the host did his time. Then he brought up 5 comics who were all doing 7 minutes apiece, competing against each other. There were 10 comics on Tuesday night, 5 on Wednesday, 5 on Thursday, 1 winner. And Tuesday night, I had a good set. I went up. I was doing a short set. So I was only doing 20 minutes, 25 minutes the first 3 nights. Maybe 30. Short sets. The first night I did fine because I just went up. First night in Ottawa. Get my legs under me. I wasn't married to the script. The second night, I was too married to the script. I went in recognizing the fact that this is the last full week of shows. I got a bunch of stuff to do between now and the special, but that was the last full week of shows to just run it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go up and I'm going to do everything in order, and I'm going to stick to the script, and I'm going to get some times on some of these segments, blah, blah, blah. It's the math of it. And that's not what the room called for. Stupid me just nonchalantly glossed over the number one rule in comedy, the prime direct, after don't steal. The second rule is read the room. It's be present. Because a comedy contest, here's what happened. The show was fine. The competitors, it wasn't a great audience to begin with. They came in. I don't know if the contest was people who had been given tickets. I don't know what was wrong with them in the first place, but they weren't a great crowd. So everybody does okay, but they go to pick up the ballots so that they can tally the voting while I'm on stage. There will be a half hour while people count or whatever, and then I'm up there. So, but to collect the ballots, weirdly, they turned the lights on. Someone walked around. It was utter chaos, and it devolved into chatty people, and it felt like the show was over. And then once that was done, they turned the lights back off, and then the MC, Dylan, went up and did a few minutes and then brought me up. But the room was never fully reset. We didn't leave the batter out long enough to settle the dough. It didn't rise. And had I gone up and done what I should have done, which was be present, acknowledge the chaos, sit down and talk to them for a minute, slow roll my way into jokes after letting them know, hey, I know what's happening. I see how we all feel. I didn't do any of that. I just went up and acted like nothing was wrong. And it was not the best night. We all have them. I'm sure. I mean, I watched the tape. It's not terrible by all intent. By every measuring stick I've ever owned, it's a good show. But it's also Ottawa, and I also know, because I know how I went in there Thursday night, 1,000% determined to flip that upside down, and how 180 degrees different it was, and how good the rest of the week finished, etc. So Ottawa Wednesday, we all apologize. It was not bad. It was just not great. I want to share a quote I read. Something I'm trying to keep in the forefront of my mind, specifically right now, about the special. I don't know who to attribute it to. It's just that it's a Chinese proverb. Confucius, perhaps. Was Sun Tzu? Was he Japanese? Who wrote the Art of War? Sun Tzu? Chinese, Japanese, Chinese, right? I don't know. They write a lot of crazy good philosophy. So here it is. 3 things you must decide on in advance: the rules, the stakes, and the quitting time. And I try to preach this to everyone I can every time it comes up in conversation, not just about my stuff, but their stuff too, because the more I say it out loud, the more it'll drive it home for me. But the point of this hinges on the word advance. In advance. Not waiting until the heat of the moment to decide all these things. The rules, the stakes, when to quit. Those things you decide on ahead of time, because we decide on them very poorly when we make them emotional decisions. So, regarding the special, the rules for me were simple. Raise the money, make the special. That's it. All the hows and whys and everything else, be damned. Raise the money, make the special. Make the special encompasses a lot of things. A lot of writing, a lot of performing. That's all on me. Also, hiring the right people, conceptualizing it properly, getting the right camera. All of that, right? That's all making it. But if those are the rules, I'm allowed to accomplish them any way I want to, which is cool, because I decided in advance. I also decided what was off limits. I'm not going to allow myself to go down the TikTok short form, blah, blah, blah route. That may be counterproductive. That may be damaging in some regards, but it's really good for my sanity, and I think that's more important to maintain than anything else. The stakes. What is at stake? What did I decide in advance was at stake? For me, my credibility in a lot of realms, something I've never been able to stand behind cruise ship work or club work or anything else where I don't have a recorded body of work to display. I say this in a vacuum. I have before. I'm sure I will continue to. But when people ask you what you do, you should be able to show them pretty immediately your current work. And I haven't been able to do that. Unless you come see me live, there is no example. Nobody knows what I do. And the quitting time. It's an interesting one. When is it done? What are you trying to accomplish? That's where the resolution has come in. If I don't get distribution, I'm going to get distribution. I have distribution, basically. By having done prior projects. But I didn't have any of that when I started this. All of that has come to fruition after the fact. So What I decided in advance was making it was enough. Getting it out. That's the whole thing. Straight to YouTube if it's gotta. And when you decide all of that in advance, and this doesn't have to be a comedy special you're making. This can be anything from a business you're starting, a car you're thinking about buying, a move you're making, anything you're doing, a relationship, all of it. You should decide in advance all of the pertinent parts. Is that the right word? Pertinent. So that you're not caught up in the middle of it trying to decide. I knew what I was going to spend. I knew what my limit was, how much of my own money I was sinking in, what limits I was willing to go to there. All of the things I decided in advance. So I'm not caught up in the heat of emotion trying to solve crisis level problems with a clouded brain. I like the Shemagh. What shirt am I wearing? Oh, that's from Arab John. All right. Yeah, wow, I am just Middle Easted up. It was good to see you, Canada, especially all my friends. A very special thanks. I know he's not watching this, but Jason Lawrence he runs the Absolute Comedy Clubs in Toronto and Ottawa. There used to be a club in Kingston, rest in peace. But a very good friend. It was just refreshing to sit in the back of the room with a comic who knows stuff and just talk comedy and have the freedom of the stage without fear that I was going to be fired or not do good enough or anything else. It was just, I've been going up there for now 15 years of my life. Wow, 15 years. And I'm appreciative. I'm also appreciative of you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Go get yourself a Shemagh or some whiskey. Old Humble Distilling Company. Use promo code Whiskey Brothers. One word. I'm Slade Ham. Tickets are at sladeham.com. Please don't sleep on the show. You're going to be very disappointed if you don't get tickets. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.